Well, I'm Jim Benz, and I'm chairman for a little while longer of the Research Advisory Committee on Gulf War Veterans Illnesses. Whenever I have witnessed Rick give testimony or speak in the past, I have always feared having to follow him with his magnificent voice, and now I'm having to do that. Gulf War veterans came back from the war in 1991 with the same experience, I think, that many of the veterans from these different wars have come back. They come back thinking that they're alone and feeling badly. They don't know what it is. The doctors can't solve it for them. And eventually, over time, our committee was appointed in 2002 because Congress was not satisfied with the job the federal government was doing to address this problem. And we produced a report. The primary author of that report is sitting in the second row, Dr. Lee Steele, in 2008, which assembled 462 pages of scientific information, every study that had ever been done of relevance to Gulf War illness, and demonstrated once and for all that this was a serious physical problem that affected between a quarter and a third of the veterans who'd served in the war. The symptoms are chronic pain, widespread pain, chronic fatigue, unexplained, the muscle and joint pain throughout the body, often gastrointestinal and skin symptoms on top of that. And so it's caused by the central nervous system reacting to the various insults that it received, which included pyridostigmine bromide, the pills that were given to the troops to protect them from nerve gas, ironically, the pesticides that were used to protect the troops from the infectious diseases, ironically, perhaps we believe the evidence is not as strong, nerve gas itself released in the destruction of Iraqi facilities, and the oil well fires, which you all will remember, blackened the sky. In 2010, the Institute of Medicine produced a report which largely agreed with ours, and from that point forward, we felt that we had accomplished the mission of at least putting the scientific community on the right path toward finding treatments. That Institute of Medicine report also said that it was likely that treatments could still be found even after 20 years at that point. So the VA actually started moving in the right direction in 2011 to adopt many of these findings from our report and the Institute of Medicine report, but in 2012 we began to see the pendulum swing back. And we still don't know really why that happened, but there clearly was a pushback toward the positions taken by the government in the 1990s that nothing special had happened to the veterans in the Gulf, that their problems were common to many other veterans and perhaps psychiatric or psychosomatic if they existed at all. None of the science supported this. So they had to, and they still do, profess adherence to what the science has shown, but they have, on the side, sought to create new science that would substantiate these old principles. And one of the examples of this was a survey which has been done by the Department of Veterans Affairs every 10 years roughly. This was the third iteration of it, to survey a large population of Gulf War veterans and veterans who did not deploy to the Gulf, who were in the service at the same time, and to survey their health. And Dr. Coughlin was involved in the production of that survey on the VA side, and we were involved in presenting some recommendations for inclusion of questions related to Gulf War illness in that survey. There are definitions of Gulf War illness, and they're based on questionnaires, and the logical thing to do was to include in this very long questionnaire about a page and a half of questions that would pertain to and enable a person judging this survey to determine if the respondent had Gulf War illness by one of the two major definitions. The Office of Public Health staff resisted this strongly. At one of our meetings, an Office of Public Health official actually refused to tell me where he worked because he thought I was going to ask him if it was nearby to go get the survey and bring it to us. And ultimately, John Gingrich, who at the time was the Chief of Staff to Secretary Shinseki, decided he would personally try to referee this decision. So he asked us to submit comments, and he received comments from VA staff. And he eventually sent me a letter saying, Jim, I'm sorry, but it's more important to go forward with this survey than to have no survey at all. And so they went forward without the questions necessary to define the illness and to look at the toxic exposures. But they had all the questions necessary to define PTSD or other mental health problems. So, as a consequence, that's the way the survey went out. A year ago last March, Dr. Coughlin testified that the reason that Mr. Gingrich had allowed the survey to go forward was that he was misinformed by senior officials at the Office of Public Health that it would cost $1 million and an additional year of delay in order for this to proceed. This is of special relevance here today because yesterday, at a meeting of our committee, the Office of Public Health reported on the results of their survey. I should give credit to the Office of Public Health. They are much more solicitous of our opinions now. They're trying to work with us in the future and so on. But they presented these results, and to no one's surprise, they show a marked increase in mental health problems in these veterans. PTSD is now at 21%. Major depressive disorder at 33%, other depressive disorder at 48%, and anxiety disorder at 18%. Members of our committee pointed out that there was a possible correlation between these people having been ill for now 23 years in the development of depression. That it did not mean that their illness was caused by depression. But these numbers, as they are going to be presented to people, and I am sure that people that they're going to be presented to include the new Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert McDonald. Secretary McDonald attended our meeting yesterday, and he is much more informal, much more engaged, much more hands-on than his predecessor, certainly, or I would say other VA secretaries for the most part that I have worked for. So I am optimistic that if he spends enough time looking into these matters, he will understand the true facts. But he's only going to understand that this survey data is only half the story, and that you need to look at why this overrepresentation of mental health problems took place. Because of the recommendations of our committee as supported and verified by Dr. Coughlin. And if he does that, the odds are much better that he will then look at other issues within the Department of Veterans Affairs that need reform and that are critical to the integrity and restoring the integrity of that organization. I come from a background, before I got involved in this, of small high-tech companies. And we didn't always do the right thing, but we tried to. And now I perceive what a luxury that is, to be able to, in your job, try to do what you honestly believe is the right thing. And especially in this town, where the institutions are as big as any, the government. It is now very evident to me that most people in their jobs, certainly in Washington, are not able to say that because they have to follow policy, they have to follow their boss, they have to follow their boss's boss's boss, whatever it may be. Dr. Coughlin didn't have that luxury either, but it didn't stop him from speaking out. And I am so honored to have known you through this process, Steve, and really hope that others at VA will follow your example now that Secretary McDonald has said he wants whistleblowers to come forward. He wants to know what's really going on in that organization. And if he does, you're the person that they're going to look to. Thank you.